For Tuesday, May 24th, a little bit about the agenda tonight. In a minute, we're going to go into executive session, consultation with our attorney. When we've completed that, we'll be back out on the dais, and we'll go through an invocation, the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll go straight into the public hearing. The public hearing part will be, we'll have a brief presentation by staff, presentation from the developer. We'll open the public hearing, and then anybody that wants to speak on the one agenda we have on the topic tonight will be invited to do so. For those people that want to yield their time to someone else, we'll give over 3 minutes. Everybody will be allowed to speak that wants to speak. We'll have a 3-minute limitation, again, unless somebody wants to yield their time. But everybody will have a chance to speak. So at this time, we're gonna recess. We're going to go into closed executive session, and we'll be back when we're finished. Convened. Recognize a former councilman, Don Smithers, is in the audience, and a former congressman, Pete Olson, is in the audience. Thank you all for attending. Some housekeeping rules. Decorum. And I don't think I need to say this, but I'll say it anyway. We'd like everybody to be respectful, regardless of what side we're on. No clapping, no cheering, no standing up. Let's get through this, and let's give both parties an equal chance to have their say. In a minute, we're going to have a staff presentation. It's going to be followed by the developer presentation. And then we'll open the public hearing. And then we'll go through. We've got a long list of folks that want to speak. Again, we'll have everybody that wants to speak will be given an opportunity to speak. Those that want to give up their time to someone else, that time will be allotted to whoever that person is. But at the end of the day, everybody will have a chance to voice their opinion. We've got 7 comments that we're going to read into the record. Let me go ahead and open with the agenda item. Oh, yeah, we got to do the prayer and pledge. Sorry about that. We're getting ahead of ourselves. The invocation is going to be done by Suzanne Watley, followed by the pledge. Why don't we do that now, Suzanne?
Thank you. Can you rise, please? As we gather here this evening, Father God, we invite you to preside over this meeting. Reflecting on EMS Week, Law Enforcement Month, and Memorial Day, we ask you, Father, to protect and care for those who provide and who have fought most for our life, our safety, and our freedom. We thank you for our safety here tonight while we lift up in prayers the families in Uvalde as they deal with unimaginable tragedy and heartbreak. Father God, I pray that you guide us tonight especially. Excuse me. Help us to listen attentively, hear clearly as others share their points of view. Give our counsel wisdom and strength as we make challenging decisions. Give us clarity as we carefully consider different opinions and discern months of information collected and placed before us. Help us to wisely evaluate our decisions, respecting our unique individual ideas, experience, and knowledge, while trusting in the unity of the spirit of this council that we share as a team. As we leave this room tonight, Father, I pray everyone here feels heard, valued, and engaged by our council, staff, and those that represent our city. And as a council, I pray we leave this room tonight confident, knowing that guided by you, we have answered our calling to serve in good faith and honor. For these things I pray, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thomas, let's move to item number 2, public comment. I think most people are here to comment on the public hearing.
Yes, sir.
Do we have anybody that signed up outside of that?
No, sir, just for the public hearing.
All right, let's move to item number 3, public hearing, 3A. Public hearing, receiving here all persons desiring to be heard regarding a proposed rezoning of 8 acres from business office district to planned development district, final development plan, the district at Sugar Creek located at the northwest corner of Century Square Boulevard and Sugar Creek Center Boulevard. And I'm going to read a couple things, Lauren, before I tee it up to you. On Friday, May 20th, City received a petition from a property owner located within 200 feet of the property subject to tonight's public hearing. After consultation with our legal team, we have determined that the petition did not meet the 20% threshold required by state law to require a 3/4 vote this evening. Further, this is a rezoning request for 8 acres of land currently zoned business office to planned development. The decision made by this council tonight is specific to this particular tract of land. It stands alone on its own merit. Any action taken here tonight will not, I repeat, will not affect the decisions made on any future applications, particularly with respect to multifamily. They too will stand on their own merits. And finally, any action tonight will not I repeat, will not reflect on the great work of the Land Use Advisory Committee or the revised land use plan. This council remains committed to that document. Lauren, let's go ahead and open it up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I'm going to start with just one or two slides on the development itself. I'm going to let the applicant in their presentation go into that a little more detail. Then I'll roll into some of the land use plan guidance and then a discussion on a little bit of the market, the economic market, housing, and multifamily, and then I'll wrap up. So property, as mentioned, is 8-acre property, 2 districts to be developed in this proposal. District A, approximately 6 acres with the multifamily units broken up into studio, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom, with live-work units with non-residential on the ground floor, as well as additional non-residential space on the ground floor, structured parking garage. District B, just about 2 acres, 3 buildings proposed to be developed as restaurants, including outdoor event space and dining space, and street-level pedestrian activation as part of it. And then I'm just putting up the site layout plan for reference here. District A, this is Century Square Boulevard and Sugar Creek Center Boulevard, and then District B here with the internal access drive. So I'm going to jump into the land use plan and the guidance staff has in evaluating development proposals. So just a quick reminder, I know we talked about it at the March workshop, but this is the citywide vision that was established in the plan. Sugar land to develop and redevelop remain desirable place to live and do business, changing in response to long-term shifts in demand and trends, managing to preserve our appeal, balancing land uses, and creating new walkable mixed-use centers. So the land use plan, we touch on a few goals here and some of the policies that I'll go into a little more in the next slides. So goal 2 is create mixed-use activity centers, and goal 3 is to encourage residential options. Regional activity centers are envisioned in the plan to transform a mix of uses integrated together in a compact, walkable area through mostly through redevelopment and infill development of existing commercial areas. The plan also establishes several parameters for future multifamily development proposals, which we'll go into a little more detail, but target ratio, and that's that ratio of multifamily to single family, location in regional activity centers, neighborhood activity centers, locating in the mixed use setting with some design parameters, as well as additional studies to be conducted. So in staff's evaluation of development proposals, we use the development code, we use our plans and policies, one of them being the land use plan. So again, the plan identifies RACs to include the variety of uses, including multifamily integrated together in this overall more walkable area. The Sugar Creek Triangle is the regional activity center that this development proposal is in. It is close to fully developed, so the goal would be in the plan for any infill development to bring that greater mix of use to the area. Currently, there are offices, retails, restaurants, hotels, car dealerships, with that missing element being residential, which this plan proposal brings forward in this regional activity center. The plan also talks about developments in regional activity centers to engage pedestrians, activate the street, build along wide pedestrian zones, pull your building up closer to it. Several features that make it more walkable, more compact, more pedestrian friendly. This proposal utilizes several of those features as been evaluated. Sidewalk seating, outdoor spaces, several items. The purpose of the live work is to also further activate that street frontage. And pull the patios out on that pedestrian area. It also supports some of the specific policy guidance from the plan that specifically talks about professionals who may prefer to do business in their home but have a separate entrance for that as well. Then we've also received guidance and some feedback from the Planning and Zoning Commission on interpreting the plan and evaluating development proposals on creating vertical and horizontal mixed-use settings as well. And then District B, bringing in District B creates the additional activation, additional outdoor areas, additional ways to pull buildings and design the site as well. And in evaluating the plan, this is also in alignment with policy statements regarding the design as well as outdoor gathering spaces. And then goal 8 here. So this is about balanced growth, and this image you see here is the economic development impact cycle. And what this really kind of focuses on is the economic impacts of land use decisions. And the economic principles is an important foundation when we talk about market questions and that were posed a lot during some of these public meetings. And what we found is mixed-use centers do yield higher taxable values per acre than lower density developments. And approving higher density developments in infill locations can help communities work to revitalize potentially stagnant commercial districts, as well as increasing taxable sales. And again, balancing uses, sustaining tax base, supporting our quality of life here. That's what this cycle is really about. And when we look at the land use plan, we can look at goal 4. It talks about a great place for business. So this talks about providing walkable access to restaurants and public spaces, providing guidance for support services during the day for your office population, as well as your evening residential population, and combining those all into an overall mixed-use walkable area. And then goal 9 talks about fostering redevelopment. This is where we start talking about incremental implementation and phasing of developments that comes from guidance in the plan. And this talks about each phase of development contributing to the ultimate intended mix of uses. It supports infill development of potentially underutilized properties in redevelopment areas. Redevelopment areas are expected, areas in the plan that are expected to experience significant change over time and are expected to redevelop into these more compact, walkable developments as well. So it supports infill development of this in order to work to prevent decline of retail centers as well. And when we look at some of, city council's top priorities, initiatives, having a thriving and vibrant economy is one of them. And part of that comes down to reimagining growth and reimagining development and redevelopment and focusing on commercial redevelopment over time as well. So this proposal is an example of infill development in one of these redevelopment areas. So again, when we look at the guidance from the plan on incremental implementation or this phasing, some of the challenges we see are fragmented ownership and numerous parcels. And that's not unique to this RAC. That's in a lot of the regional activity centers and neighborhood activity centers. And so it limits, your ability for a complete redevelopment at one time. And we talked about this through with the Planning and Zoning Commission again and received feedback from them that each development proposal is going to need to be evaluated dependent on its context within the regional activity center. And depending on the project, its size, its location, what it is, its mix of uses, that's the determination of the required elements that would need to be a part of each project. And the commission provided feedback that some elements in a regional activity center just could not realistically be established in a single proposal. And that's primarily due to the challenges we see with numerous parcels, fragmented ownership, and the challenges that come with that. So again, we look to some of the feedback we got from the commission on incremental implementation, and the commission provided feedback that again, all development proposals should contribute to this phasing, to this incremental implementation, which is consistent with the feedback in the guidance in the plan, that each phase of development should contribute to this overall intended mix. So this proposal contributes to that intended mix of use in this Sugar Creek Triangle Regional Activity Center, which is more of an office-centric regional activity center, which the plan says should have its first phase of development to include uses such as retail or residential to balance those existing office uses. Then I want to touch on the guidance we have for multifamily. This is a multifamily proposal before us, so it's important to touch on some of these guidance that we have in the plan. So it breaks it down into several kind of key components here. The citywide and regional activity center specific guidance, and that's about that ratio of single family to multifamily citywide, and then the specific numbers of units allocated for each regional activity center. It provides guidance where multifamily is appropriate, design elements for your buildings, use of structured parking, pedestrian spaces, the mix of uses, as well as those additional studies, the school impact study and the transportation analysis as well. Again, this is kind of just summing that up. Regional activity centers supporting multifamily. The plan talks about no new standalone multifamily needs to be part of a vertical or horizontal mix. The guidance on the percentages and the site-specific limits, where they're appropriate, the studies, and utilizing that parking garage versus surface. And goal 3 of the plan talks specifically to multifamily and residential, and it states the city should not approve new standalone single-use multifamily residential complexes. And staff has evaluated this development proposal with that vision as outlined in the plan, and have found that this project's multifamily component is vertically mixed from our evaluation, from the feedback from the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as horizontally mixed with the activation created throughout District A and District B with the inclusion of both. And I spoke on the vertical and horizontal mix. This is the guidance from the plan, specifically placing your fitness center, leasing office, and amenity centers on the first floor, utilizing the integrated parking garage. This proposal does that, as well as include additional non-residential space on the first floor, maximizing that ground floor area on District A, and then also mixing horizontally across into District B with more additional use and pedestrian activation on the entire 8 acres. Quickly, I'm going to touch on the studies. So the traffic impact analysis was completed for this project. There were several comments made during the Planning and Zoning Commission public comment period regarding perceived traffic impacts from this proposed development. There were also many comments made regarding existing traffic concerns inside the Sugar Creek neighborhood, including along Sugar Creek Boulevard and Country Club Boulevard, as well as other local roads internal to the community. Want to highlight that city traffic staff did research the number of complaints received for the Sugar Creek neighborhood. There had only been 3 formal complaints to the city since 2016. The city did complete a restriping project on Country Club Boulevard in 2013 to work on adding a bike lane, narrowing the roadway to discourage speed, in an effort to discourage speeding, as well as updated the striping and pavement in response to resident feedback in 2019. And then finally, the TIA traffic impact analysis study was conducted for the study area that is shown here in the red circle. The study did identify need for turn lanes on both roads into the development, and city traffic and engineering staff did complete their review of the TIA and concurred with the findings, specifically noting that the Sugar Creek neighborhood south of 59 is not expected to be significantly impacted by the proposed development. Additional study, in addition to the TIA, was the school impact study. This was performed by the demographer PASA, P-A-S-A, that's used by the Fort Bend ISD, which indicated a minimal impact on the local schools, yielding 29 students from their findings once fully occupied, which they attributed to the low student ratio was attributed to the mix of unit types, primarily being studio and 1 bedroom. So quickly, I want to also just do a slide here on the development code guidance. That is also how we evaluate development proposals, especially plan developments, which is our zoning district. The PD, the plan development districts, designed to permit new or innovative concepts, create new areas, but also follow the development standards in the code and our city policies, including the comprehensive plan, master plans, and the land use plan. It does also include components that should be included in a PD submittal for urban guide and suburban guide that includes multifamily proposals. So we also evaluated this proposal against the development code requirements for multifamily PDs and found that it aligned with several of those also as listed here that have already been mentioned. And I'm going to finish up here with a little discussion on the market. So economic market, housing market, and the multifamily market, because that's been important in a lot of the public discussions and a lot of the discussions we've had on this project thus far. So throughout the public meeting process, there have been discussions regarding the current market for commercial, retail, as well as office in the city and its submarkets. But we just want to highlight that a submarket is not an accurate comparison tool. Submarkets are not based on city or jurisdictional boundaries, and they're based on area trends of just an area, and they evolve and they change, and they're not used by staff as a tool for comparison for Sugar Land. We also want to note that right now Sugar Land has a shallow office market. meaning there's not a large demand for office right now. And we know the effects of the pandemic has had a significant impact on decrease in the demand for office space as we know it here traditionally in Sugar Land. Retail vacancy, though, has been on a downward trend since the end of 2020. Sales tax collections have rebounded and increased over 35% from January of this year as compared to prior years. If we look at Sugar Land Town Square here, as of January of this year, it is about 80% occupied and 90% leased up. And we have that next statement in quotes, retail follows rooftops. And that's really talking about new housing having a positive impact on retail demand. And this segues into kind of the discussion on the housing market here in Sugar Land. And what we've seen is over the last 5 years, employment has grown 14%, while the population has experienced limited growth at 1.4%. And this diagram here is from the city's workforce analysis study. It's essentially the worker inflow and outflow. So you see the green circle on the left are folks that are employed in Sugar Land but live outside. It's a little over 62,000. And then the circle on the right, the blue circle, is live in Sugar Land but are employed outside. And that's about 45,700. So in the middle are those that live and work in Sugar Land, which is a little over 7,000. So this limited population growth could be attributed to the limited growth in housing stock, which could signal a demand for this type of housing and opportunities to convert employees into residents. So a lot of discussion, obviously, around the multifamily market and the current multifamily housing market in Sugar Land and our surrounding areas led to some questions on numbers and the ratio from the plan. So currently there are a little over 3,000 multifamily units built, which accounts for about 7.9% of the current housing in the city. Current ratio is 92.1 single family to 7.9 multifamily. When you look at both the city and the ETJ combined, it's 91%, 91.8, and 8.2. And with this development project proposal would take the citywide multifamily to a total of 8.8% of the residential. So this is about that overall citywide ratio that we mentioned in our guidance from the plan. And what we found in looking at the multifamily market is that market rent and occupancy rates in Sugar Land have been increasing over the last 5 years. And within that same time period, the inventory of multifamily has not grown. We haven't had any new residential developments be built. What we have seen is the average occupancy rates remain constant at 95% or higher in all of our multifamily developments in the city. They're again looking at increasing market rents and occupancy rates for multifamily units could signal an increase in demand for this type of housing. We did have a request at the March workshop meeting with council for detailed information on the rental rates within the city as well as along Dulles Avenue, and that was provided in the agenda report for the council and the public. And then I want to touch on the some comments that have been made throughout the public meeting process and at the Planning and Zoning Commission citing safety concerns and crime as a result of multifamily developments. And we've been able to visit with the police department and work with them to analyze some data. They did analyze the number of police reports for 2019 and 2021 for both multifamily and single family housing in some sample geographic areas around the city. What the results showed was that crime per housing unit, if you break it down by multifamily and single family, account for similar number of crimes per unit. So the conclusion from our police department is that there's no significant crime difference in the city of Sugar Land, where multifamily homes have been introduced adjacent to single family homes here in the city. And just finally, some discussion in the public hearing meetings on comparison of Sugar Land multifamily market to our surrounding areas, Stafford, Missouri City. On average, both Stafford and Missouri City have lower market rents per multifamily unit than Sugar Land. And also just kind of noting that the markets just aren't really a comparable source to Sugar Land. We have a larger employment hub. We have a higher median household income. We have several tourism destinations around the city. So we don't use those as really a comparison tool. touch real briefly and finish up here on P&Z and City Council feedback. So the Planning and Zoning Commission did hold several meetings, a workshop meeting, and then followed by a public hearing meeting, as well as consideration and action. The P&Z did request some minor modifications to the PD material. They discussed and asked for feedback from staff and the applicant on some assurances and timing for the District B development, discussion on the non-residential uses on the ground floor of District A, as well as a pretty comprehensive discussion on the economic market and our land use plan guidance. And then the City Council held a workshop March 22nd. We reviewed the land use plan policy direction as well as activity center implementation project, and then discussed this development proposal as well. So similar request on the development of District A and District B from the council, discussion of the use list on District B, the multifamily rental rates discussion, and a detailed response was also provided by the applicant team to council in your agenda reports as well. And then the Planning and Zoning Commission held their consideration and action, and at that time, staff supported recommendation of approval to the mayor and city council based on the determination that it did align with the land use plan guidance for this regional activity center, as well as the PD regulations established in the development code. And then at that time, the commission voted 6-2 in favor of recommending approval of the development proposal. And so the public hearing notice, we did notify in the paper, on the website, including our project-specific webpage for this proposal. Property owners were notified, the HOAs notified, citywide messaging on Nextdoor and Facebook, the city's Facebook page, email notifications sent to those that had signed up on the project-specific webpage, as well as the sign. We had received 2 formal public comment forms since posting of the public hearing. Those were printed out and provided for the council at the dais. And so recommendation next steps, we recommend holding the public hearing and first reading of the ordinance. And the applicant, again, has a presentation, and then we're all available for discussion and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. At this time, we're going to wait for questions from council. A little bit about the process. Planning and Zoning Commission's bound by 3 documents: the comprehensive plan, the zoning regs, and the development code. If it complies with those 3 documents, they have to vote in favor. The 2 members that didn't vote in favor were very specific in why they said they didn't vote in favor. That was a 6-2 vote. The council, although we're bound by those 3 documents, we also get to take into account public opinion. So we're not entirely bound by law to approve any application just because it complies with those 3 documents. We get to take into account public comments. You will hear us tonight as we deliberate. We'll be very specific in our comments. At this time, we're going to ask that the developer make his presentation. Then following that presentation, we'll open the public hearing.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. You're wounded. I hope you didn't get an altercation outside, huh?
I wish I had a better story, but I need to come up with something better than what really happened.
Okay.
When you started working out and you drop a weight on your foot, it's not good.
That
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you very much for your time this evening. I'd like to start off. My name is Jeff Simpson from Kaplan Developer. I'd like to start off with a short 3D, video that is based on the plans that we have put together for this district of Sugar Creek. And we believe that this video will dispel quite a bit. Well, here it comes. Will dispel quite a bit of the misinformation that has been going around. Do I press again? There you go. Okay. How do I get to the presentation part? There we go. Okay. So I just want to start off. I know this slide was in Lauren's, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, belaboring it. But this is an aerial version of the site plan for the video that you just saw. The northern part, District A, is the mid-rise building with a structured parking garage on the left-hand side with units wrapped around it. You have a 28-foot wide private drive that intersects District A and District B, with the northern side of that drive having the live-work units, which were put there in order to activate the street. And then on the other side, where District B is where the 3 restaurants will go, as well as the outdoor event lawn, which is in between the 3 restaurants. Arrow keys? Okay, thanks. And just for a little bit of perspective, I know you guys probably already know this, but I just would throw it up to show you location. This is an aerial looking south with 59 on the left-hand side, Highway 90 on the right. You can see the Sugarland Business Park there, Derry Ashford, just to sort of get an overview. And the lakes, of course, you see there are the Venetian and Alkire neighborhoods, for which we appreciate their support. And also wanted to just point out, I'll talk a little about this later, but given that overlap of how many people who work in Sugarland actually don't live in Sugarland, just threw some employee numbers up just for Schlumberger. Of those 2,000 employees that work there, there's roughly 1,820 statistically that do not live and commute outside of Sugarland, taking their tax dollars with them and causing traffic. The next part of my presentation, I just want to break it up into a little discussion about District A and a little discussion about District B. So this will be the discussion about District A. Here you can see the active streetscape on the first floor where the live work units are. I can go over that a little bit more in detail in a minute. The proposed uses for District A is 387 multifamily units, 15 live work units, and 1 commercial space, which is, we were looking at that picture earlier, is on the left-hand side of the building, on the first floor. A little bit about live work units. It was brought up in prior meetings, and we've heard comments about Lake Point townhomes were supposed to be live work. They didn't turn out to be live work. We have actually done some of those before where they ended up not being live work. And so we spent a lot of time on the architecture of both the interior and the exterior of the live work units to make sure that they are actually live work units and not, I looked at a bunch of pictures on websites, HAR, et cetera, of Lake Point townhomes that were for sale or have been sold, and the first floor of those townhomes looks like the first floor of any single family home. And it is very intentional that our architecture will make sure, as well as our lease terms, will make sure that the first floor units are not used for living, but simply for work. I know that y'all have seen this slide before, but I'll just walk you through it one more time. So on the right-hand side is the first floor. The patrons would enter off of that streetscape, off of a 10-foot wide sidewalk with canopies over the areas, very much retail look, different facade than the units above. And when I mentioned the exterior architecture is intentional, that's apparent from the slides and the video that we just saw. But the interior is also really important too. In order to pull off live work, which we're working on roughly 114 of these in Woodland Hills, California right now as well. It's important to make sure that on the downstairs portion, there's storefront glass and it is set up essentially so that the tenant can come in, put in TI, and there's no reason or really anything to live down there other than a restroom which is used for customers. You can see that the resident will have access to from the climate-controlled corridors, both on the first and second floor. And at the end of the day, they would lock up that door, take the stairs up to their second floor where all of the living, the closets, the kitchen, et cetera, all are located. As I mentioned, our tenants will be required to operate a business in their unit. The distinctive exterior activating the street, I think it's important to point out, we did not add these live-work units in order to be mixed use. We add these live-work units to accomplish one of the goals in the land use plan, which is to activate the street. Live-work units appeal to shifts in the way that people are working and living, et cetera. That Venn diagram that was shown earlier with a very little bit of overlap for live-work needs to be a lot larger. People are really wanting more minimalism and live-work play all in the same area. It's also important to point out that we have 15 of these units, and we've already received interest through our social media and just outreach and people hearing about the project from a photographer, art studio, a small jeweler, a bakery where it's sort of like when you go to Starbucks and you order one of their sandwiches, it's not baked there, but they warm them up, and a coffee shop owner. This is a bit of a busy slide, so I'll just point out some of the highlights. As you saw in the video, these units are extremely high-end with the quartz countertops. They're smart homes. Each unit has a gigabyte of Wi-Fi. That Wi-Fi is used to operate a smart home system that will control your thermostat, your door lock, and potentially light. And you can actually control that from your office. So if you're working over at Schlumberger and living over at this complex, and you want to turn the air conditioner down before you head home, you can do that. You can also use your iPhone or Android in order to open up your door should you have somebody come in to walk the dog or anything like that. And in terms of community amenities, it's important to point out roughly 50% of the properties that we build, people actually do work there. They work from home. Part of the reason is that we provide them with rooms for co-working, a lounge, conference rooms. We have an Equinox-inspired fitness center, which you'll saw in the video. There's a multi-sport simulator where you can play golf, baseball, soccer, skeet. There's all kinds of things. There's a dog park with dog wash stations. So we actually have the big steel tubs that you can put the dogs in, and that's to clean. And then also not mentioned on here, but very much of note is in the garage there is an area where you can lock up and store your bikes. And right next to that area is an area where it'll be stocked with all the equipment that you would need to tune your bike, change a tire, et cetera, as well as the vice grips in order to hold them so that you can work on them. And it's maybe difficult to sort of see in the back, but this is pictures and examples of everything that was listed on that prior page and various projects that we have actually built. Like, for instance, the dog wash, you can see the 2 steel tubs where the dogs get washed. So now I'll flip over to District B and talk about that briefly. District B would be the part on the left where the restaurants are. Our proposed uses, well, the history of this is we started off roughly 2.5 years ago with simply just multifamily units. We actually didn't have a parking garage, and it looked completely different. Over time, we added the parking garage, shrunk the footprint, and we were left with the triangle, which is now District B. We've been asked several times what is going to happen to District B, and we're not buying it. We don't know was not a sufficient answer, and frankly, it didn't fulfill the part of the plan that activating the street and engaging in pedestrian activity, so that we added District B to our PD, to this PD, and then further restricted them to be restaurants, full-service restaurants. The timing of District A and B, we have agreed in this PD that we will submit for a building permit for at least one of the District B restaurants at the same time that we do for District A. The timing of the restaurant opening up will be shortly after District A establishes occupancy, with the second and third restaurant to follow shortly behind. And then there's the same, in quotes, retail follows rooftops. But the whole idea is that District A and B together work together symbiotically in order to engage pedestrian activity and create an interactive community where there's connectivity. There's just another slide from the video. Talk just a little bit about the market from our perspective. I know you heard from staff, but our rent structure, rents range from around $1,600 for the studio units up to $2,675 for the 2 bedrooms, of which there's only 20%. The average rent is $2,200. The live-work units average $2,700. I find it kind of interesting that if you look at the live-work units, they're 800 feet on the bottom, 800 feet on the bottom, 800 feet on the top. And if you look at a comparable 800 square foot unit without the work portion, it's around $1,900. And so what you do when you get the live-work is it's $2,700, so you're paying that extra $800, which works out to be a rent of $13 for a retail space. Our assumption of 22 units per month will achieve stabilization within 18 months. The arc at the grid, which has been discussed before, but for those of you who don't know, is about 3 miles from here. It's in Stafford. Is probably one of the most recently completed ones that are in the submarket, although it's in Stafford. Is a 3-story garden project. It's not a 5-story structured parking, but they have average rents of $1,873. Our lease up assumption of 22 a month, they actually did lease up at over 30 a month in phases of 2 phases of 731 units. And they're starting a 3rd phase now. As mentioned, submarket rents have increased significantly. Even since towards the end of last year, the market rents have gone up close to $200 a month, 13.9% growth just in the last year, showing how tight it is, the market, and how much demand there is for this type of product. District Sugar Creek is much better located than the grid. Number one, it's in Sugar Land. And we're targeting two market segments, which is empty nesters and young professionals. And that is the reason for our mix being heavy on the 1 bedrooms and studios and light on the 2 bedrooms. It's close to major employment centers. That map we showed earlier with the big business park and Schlumberger. It's a great location. It's an 8-minute walk to the largest employer. The market is tight, and it's a great location for this type of housing in this project. The grid was brought up in prior meetings. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the grid. So for those of you who haven't been over there, this shows the apartment areas are on the far left. The restaurants are real far away. There's a Walmart. It's sort of tucked in the back of a mixed-use development. It's separated by vacant land, industrial warehouses, and in terms of walkability, if you want to walk to a 7-Eleven, it takes you 7 minutes. If you want to walk to McDonald's inside of a Walmart, take you 10 minutes, and it's a 3-minute walk. So I guess you walk past it while you're walking to McDonald's, past an abandoned corporate campus with broken windows. And yet they're still achieving those great rents and have a high velocity of lease up. And I like this slide. It's a view from the grid. If you actually take Google Earth and look what you look at in the north, south, east, west from the apartments, you get a view of the abandoned TI building, industrial buildings, warehouse, distribution, and a medical supply distribution building. Just a little bit more about multifamily supply and demand. We are here with a unique project that is going to solve one of Sugar Land's problems, which is housing. It has a housing shortage. That's part of the reason why the rents go up. That's part of the reason why 91% of the people who work here don't live here. We are targeting those young income professionals and renters by choice, but demand is definitely outstripping supply. With a 96.5% occupancy per yardie, and forecast rents of 48% growth over the next 10 years. And relative to Sugar Land's office occupancy, the numbers may be a little bit different depending on the source. We show that it's 83 to 84%, which is not healthy. Restaurant demand. It has been asked of us to do some research and talk with some brokers about restaurant. We spoke with Ironbridge Realty Partners. The quote that we got from them after they studied our plan was the addition of your approximate 600 new residents combined with existing nearby daytime population should create a compelling story for restaurateurs to want to serve the area. We've spoken with multiple end users, and we are working with the Japanero guys. They're doing their due diligence right now for 3 new concepts. Some of the mini concepts, these aren't the ones that they're going to settle on, so they're still doing their diligence, would be Planted, Marmalade Cafe, and Coyote Grill, which is Asian fusion. Once again, you see that retail follows rooftops. It is absolutely true. There's been a lot of talk about grocers leaving the area and not surviving. And actually, one of the things that I learned recently was that part of the reasons that the Gerlands left was because they needed $36 per cart per shopper in order to break even, and they were at $19 per cart. So it just the amount of I guess the lack of people living here. For instance, when I go grocery shopping, I do it close to my house, so don't do it close to my office. So the adding rooftops will help solve the problem where you can support the retail establishments better. Property values, it has been discussed, and I've heard in the past that people are concerned that these would bring property values down. I thought that it was important to point out that Sugar Creek, for instance, since 1997 to 2021 had a 142% increase per HAR, despite being next to 668 units Class B garden apartments off of Dulles. In comparison, Sugar Creek is a high-end Class A mid-rise development located across a 10-lane interstate with 6 lanes of service roads. We did complete a traffic study. I believe it's online and can be downloaded from the website, Sugar Land website. The projected increase of vehicles that would be heading southbound from the project works out to be 3.75 cars per hour. And the increase of vehicles heading northbound would be 7.5 cars per hour. And I want to just point out that this TIA was actually scoped by the city and completed per industry standards using the formulas that are recognized industry-wide. As Lauren mentioned, we did do a school impact study, which is a requirement, but it also turned out that the desired mix that we have, which is 80-20, did result in fewer students being added to the local schools. If you look at just the taxes that this project will generate, just for District A alone, the amount of taxes are enough to educate 3.5 students for every student that this project will actually add. With regard to crime, we spoke with one of Sugar Land's crime prevention officers, and the quote is up there, but essentially no significant crime difference where multifamily homes have been introduced adjacent to single-family homes in Sugar Land. A little bit about us. We're a 44-year-old family-owned company, locally owned. My partner, Mike Kaplan, 27 years Sugar Creek and Sweetwater resident. I lived in Greatwood for 10 years. Children attended Fort Bend ISD schools. We took the slide out, but our architect has also has worked on projects in and around Sugar Land, goes to one of the churches in Sugar Land, and is active in the community. With regard to Kaplan's experience, while we don't currently, we focus specifically on projects like this, but over our history, we have developed and or operated 2.5 million square feet of retail, 35,000 multifamily units, and developed $1 billion of multifamily in a little over a decade. With regard to long-term ownership, the question was asked early on at one of the HOA meetings, how long do you hold your projects? And an example was given by Mike. He said, well, we just sold one that we held for 2 years. That became, you guys sell everything that you build as soon as you can. We have partnered with a equity partner who you'll hear from later, who are also long-term holders. They have sold one of the 18 projects since 2013, and they are so our interests are aligned, and this is not a flip project. This slide just talks a little bit about the land use plan. I won't go too much into it, but essentially just with the intent and the goals, we've spent the last 2.5 years making sure that we are actually checking the boxes and making sure that we accomplish the intent and goals of the land use plan. So the Sugar Creek Property Owners Association, so this is the Property Owners Association that is in, I guess I'd say our direct neighbors. And the type is really small up there for those of you in the back who can't see it. Just flip to it, read it. The POA recently had a new board of directors elected, and 80% of those board of directors that were elected are strongly in favor of the Kaplan multifamily development. So while this project has many benefits for the broader city of Sugar Land, these property owners are the property's direct neighbors. It's an assemblage of different types of businesses on the north side of 16 lanes of a feeder and interstate, all who stand to gain the most from the approval of this project. In conclusion, members of the community, including directors of HOAs, have expressed they're more concerned about what happens if this project is not approved rather than what happens if it is approved. The deteriorating retail will benefit from the new high-income residents, which on average will make $70,000 a year, with substantial discretionary income being a catalyst for redevelopment and revitalization of the area. I've heard it expressed that it's this project's responsibility alone to change entire swaths of nearby real estate. It's impractical and impossible, but it is incremental to that effort. And then I just mentioned in terms of, I've heard a lot about wanting a new grocery store and having a grocery store, et cetera. And the reasons we would love one too. This gets us closer to that by adding high-income people who are going to shop where they live. This project should be approved because the city's invested a lot of time and money with consultants, experts, and other professionals to develop the land use plan. Kaplan, we have worked with the city for over 2.5 years and invested over $1 million achieving these goals with regard to the land use plan and making the project what you saw in that video. City staff has ensured that the project aligned with the land use plan, which is a great document and overwhelmingly supports the project. P&Z Commission overwhelmingly support the project. The LUAC overwhelmingly supports the project, and it aligns with the land use plan that they wrote. It's contradictory to oppose a project by parsing the land use plan the authors support overwhelmingly, and then in a nearly 5-year process of creating and executing the land use plan has finally come full circle with a great project, a unique project that will be an asset to the city of Sugar Land and the area. This is how example of how well-run government should work without politicization. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
This time we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. First, we're going to have Thomas read in 7 comments into the public record, and then we'll open. Our first individual that will speak on deck, so to speak, is Doug Goff. So Doug, following this, Thomas reading the comments in, you'll be invited. If you state your name, state your address. If you have a financial interest in this project, I'd ask that you disclose that at the time that you're at the podium.
Mr. Goff, you may want to relax. I'm going to be a while.
Yeah,
Thanks,
no,
sir.
go ahead. Go ahead, Thomas.
Thank you, sir. First up is Delana Austin, 2007 Country Club, Sugar Land, Texas. I'm writing to voice my opposition to the district at Sugar Creek. Like my neighbors, I too have concerns regarding the approval of an apartment complex within Sugar Creek RAC, about the resulting increase in traffic on our streets, making our streets less safe for pedestrians. But my primary opposition is simpler in scope. The Sugar Creek RAC is zoned as commercial and should remain commercially zoned, though the 2018 land use plan allows for limited redevelopment under strict guidelines. The Kaplan Group's proposal proposed at this time, known as District 8, fails woefully to meet City Council's guidelines for the area outlined in the 2018 land use plan. The 2018 land use plan defines a regional activity center as a commercial and civic hub of the city that will attract people from around the city and across the region to work, shop, eat, and attend events. Should each contain a mix of uses as offices, retail, residential, and civic institutions integrated together in a compact, walkable area and have its own unique character. Uses should be mixed vertically in buildings, and the first floors should engage pedestrians and activate the street. The District A development, as presently presented by Kaplan Group, is nothing more than a standalone apartment project, and that does not meet the vision of the 2018 City Council for the Sugar Creek Triangle and goes against the 2018 land use plan modification, which specifically states that standalone apartments were not to be considered. The project will not be a commercial or civic hub. The project, as stated, is primarily a multi-story 387 apartment building as planned with 15 live workspaces on the first floor. This project cannot and will not attract people to work, shop, eat, or attend events because it's not offering restaurants, shops, or venue facilities in District A. District B, which is currently under consideration, is not currently under consideration tonight and is only described as a potential future development in the Kaplan plan, which is not guaranteed to come to fruition. The salient point is the retail facilities, which are required to meet the 2018 land use plan, are not mandated in Part A. Therefore, the project as presented is a residential apartment complex with 15 workspaces for residents. I surmise these workspaces These workspaces units were only added to meet the absolute minimal classification of a mixed-use facility in order for it to be considered by the Planning and Development Board. With 93% of the project space being dedicated residential apartments, it certainly does not meet the intent of the city's 2018 land use plan and be viewed as a standalone multifamily, which is strictly prohibited by the land use plan. There are a couple more paragraphs, Mayor. Would you like me to continue?
No, go ahead and let's be respectful.
Okay. All right, next up is Mindy Gross. She's with excellent in government fundraising and visible enthusiasm. We cannot make tonight's city council meeting, but we would like to be heard. Thank you. Good evening. My family lives in Sugar Creek. We're opposed to the rezoning application for the following reasons. One, in the land use plan of 2018, it states in the future, the city should not approve new standalone, single-use, multifamily residential complexes. The district at Sugar Creek Apartments is a standalone, single-use, multifamily residential complex. Two, we were told the rationale to rezone was to increase the tax base, but rezoning actually defeats the purpose by deterring investors because they can't trust the city to protect the established zoning and to protect their investment. Three, the Sugar Creek area does not need additional retail space. There's plenty of vacant existing retail space. Additionally, vacant retail space does not contribute to the tax base revenue, but it does contribute to crime and lower property values. Four, Sugar Land does not need more apartments. Existing complexes aren't even at capacity. Where will the residents come from to fill the new complex? The district at Sugar Creek will just be more vacant upscale apartments with the potential for lower rents to fill them and to convert them to Section 8 housing, thereby lowering property values even further, which is actually what took down Fondren Southwest area in Houston. And what happened to Fondren Southwest in the late 80s was the impetus for us to sell our home there and move to Sugar Creek. We were told by the developer of the district at Sugar Creek that that could not and would not happen here. If a pandemic has taught us anything, never say never. Therefore, we respectfully request a no vote on the rezoning application. Thank you for your time. Up next is Malvern Lusky, 2519 Plantation Lane, Sugar Land, Texas. We're against approval of the redistricting. So there we go, clock started. We're against the approval of the redistricting of the above development. We opposed having apartments built near the Sugar Creek subdivision as we feel they will reduce the value of our property. We implore you to listen to the comments of your constituents over those of the developer. The developer will build the apartments, sell them, and not care what happens with the surrounding neighborhood in the long term. Kaplan, Simpson, and Green do not live in Sugar Land. Like any business, their main concern is executing their business plan and moving on to the next project. We are proud of the fact that Sugar Land has the feeling of a small town, that it is a safe place. In fact, Sugar Land was listed in 2022 as one of the top 50 places to live in the United States, thanks to the arduous work of the City Council and the city's supporting staff. For that reason, people from all over are attracted to make Sugar Land their home. Sugar Land has painstakingly prepared a land use plan, and we should stick to it. Young families with small children are moving into the Sugar Creek subdivision. We need to ensure that our neighborhood and our streets are free from traffic and crime. The police have done an excellent job of this so far, but we're afraid the development will bring additional people and cars, making their job harder. Furthermore, we are concerned about our dullest schools to become even more overcrowded. What Sugar Land needs instead of additional apartments is a luxury condominium similar to those in the Galleria and uptown areas of Houston. Sugar Land has nothing like this. Again, we implore you to heed your constituents more than the developers. How would you feel if this development were being built across from your subdivision? Thank you for your consideration and our comments. Malvern Lusky. Okay, this is from Diane Inglet, 4534 Bermuda Drive, Sugar Land, Texas. Dear Mayor and council members, my name is Diane Inglet and I live, as stated the address. I've been a resident of Sugar Land for 11 years and am a former member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm writing to support the approval of the proposed rezoning of 8 acres from Business Office District to a planned development district for final development plan known as the District at Sugar Creek, located at the northwest corner of Century Square Boulevard and Sugar Creek Boulevard. This project meets the vision, long-range goals, and objectives of the land use plan regarding multifamily and development of remaining vacant areas for regional activity centers. The live-work units will provide convenient access to restaurants and services for the residents of the multifamily facility and employees of the surrounding commercial buildings. The developer has provided impact studies for traffic, pedestrian, bicycles, school, drainage, and other technical reviews which illustrate the project is a good fit for this property and will not have an adverse impact on the existing businesses and residences in the area. The landscaping plans exceed the recommended guidance. While I was a member of the P&Z, we reviewed and provided feedback on this project to the developer, Kaplan. The feedback has been incorporated into the current plan within the RAC. The city's land use plan identifies with this RAC centered on the triangle between US 90A, US Highway 59, and Derry Ashford. It should include offices, retail, condos, or retail apartments and a hotel. It further states that any proposed multifamily residential project should be a part of a multi-use development that activates the adjacent pedestrian realm and should incorporate structured and shared parking. This project meets all the terms and guidance of the land use plan. Before recommending a project to the City Council, it is incumbent on P&Z to cite any conditions or reasons for denial and document any code requirements that the project does not meet. P&Z has not cited any reason for denial. If we failed anywhere, we could have adopted and moved a little faster in rezoning regional activity centers to accommodate the higher density projects that were anticipated. Kaplan has worked with city staff for 2+ years and incorporated staff and P&Z feedback. In all instances, Kaplan has modified its plans for the project to meet the land use plan guidance. In summary, the land use plan adopted in August 2018 outlines policy direction and guidance for land use decisions to ensure the city reaches its long-term vision. I support the project and appreciate your consideration of my comments. Diane Inglet. Okay, up next is Ann Magoon with Berkshire Hathaway. To the City of Sugar Land City Council, I'm opposed to the rezoning of District B, the district at Sugar Creek. As a real estate broker myself, I am well aware of the resulting decrease in residential valuations whenever apartments are developed near a subdivision. The planned 387 multifamily units will jeopardize the valuation and living conditions of nearby Sugar Creek subdivision. They will increase the traffic patterns within the community and make our subdivision less safe for children who play and the residents who walk and jog in the area. The land use plan on page 33 of the process for the plan update states in part, the community has become very concerned with the impacts of additional multifamily residential on home values, schools, mobility, and potential increase in crime. Of the 188 responses received from the online town hall, 81% stated opposition to multifamily high-density apartments. The development itself is has insufficient parking for the planned commercial and residential spaces. Furthermore, based on the already existing food establishments in the area, there is some concern that the quality of food establishments will not be attracted to the area. Thank you, Ann Magoon. Okay, a couple more that were received after the 3 o'clock deadline today, Mr. Mayor. First one is from Jim Valdehar, and and don't see address listed. Okay. I'm a resident in Venetian Estates and have lived in Sugar Land since 1997. As a long-term resident of Sugar Land, I am concerned about and interested in the continued positive growth of our great city. One of the most important efforts undertaken by the city in recent years was the establishment of the Land Use Task Force. The group of concerned citizens with support from city staff spent several years developing a plan to address continued growth in our city. Very early in that process, it became obvious that the only way our city is going to continue to grow is through redevelopment. As such, this task force spent considerable time developing a master plan for how to accomplish this redevelopment. A key component was the creation of RACs and NACs. To my knowledge, Sugar Creek Development is the first project to participate in this type of redevelopment. This project will serve to revitalize a tired development and serve as a great addition to the very entrance of our city. RACs are considered to be mixed use, consisting of retail, commercial, and multifamily residential in a walkable setting. The only missing component of this mixed use in Sugar Creek Triangle is the residential component. This proposed project will serve to complete the component of the RAC and has already secured the commitment for 3 additional restaurants, further enhancing the total RAC concept. This proposed development is for high-end multi-story apartment buildings and will integrate public spaces as well as an adjacent parking garage. The developer in this project has done everything required in the rules of the RAC. They have worked collaboratively with the city for over 2 years trying to address every concern raised by the city. If this project is not approved, it will send a very clear message to any other potential developer. The city of Sugar Land is not interested in new development, and further, they do not adhere to the rules that were approved by a prior city council. I have participated in several meetings regarding this project and have heard several comments that cause me some concern. One, that this project is a standalone apartment complex. That is simply not correct. As previously stated, this project provides the residential component that has been missing from the Sugar Creek Triangle. Second, I have heard the comment that we, the city of Sugar Land, should not settle for the first project that comes our way. While this may be the first project to participate in the RAC concept, it is also the only one to come forward since the creation of the RAC concept from the land use plan. This developer has done everything asked of him and then some. If this project is not approved, we will not have any other developers attempt such a project. Finally, there have been several citizen voices concerned about impact this development will have on safety, traffic, overcrowding, and property values. And we'll just have to stop there. All righty, last one. This one is from Julie Mickham. I don't see an address stated.
She's in Brookside, Belknap.
Okay. All right, so thank you for allowing my statement to be included in this discussion. My name is Julie Mickham. I've been selling real estate for over 25 years. My clientele here is varied as our city in that it is diverse in culture, age, and family statuses. This is a unique aspect of our area that I enjoy and admire. It is a service to this vibrant community that I spent 5+ years on the Land Use Committee studying and discussing how Sugar Land should move into the next 25 years. Coming from and frequently returning to the New York metropolitan area, I see other areas that have had to retool to survive as a vibrant community. The sleepy town of Pinnagogue, New York, transformed itself with additional mixed types of higher density residential, all within walking distance of the town's struggling retailers. Take a moment and look it up. It is now one of the most desirable areas in the county. The growth and changes clearly evidence a need for a blend of residential, educational, cultural, and professional environments. The Land Use Committee spent years learning about ways to progress as a city and as we learned, we shared it with our citizens. It is undeniable that most of our community wants this move towards live, work, and walkability. The areas that are thriving, such as Lake Point, Whole Foods area, prove this, as do areas that lag, such as Town Square, which, while providing many shopping and dining opportunities, continue to struggle to retain good businesses because the immediate residential density does not sufficiently support the retail. The addition of the Kaplan project to the Sugar Creek Triangle would add much needed mixed use to the regional business office area of our city. It is what the Land Use Advisory Committee envisioned for this RAC. Kaplan's proposal is a wonderful blend of all features. The fact that they have invested in meeting the requirements of the exact type of development that the Land Use Advisory Committee found most beneficial to our city's continued success should be applauded and accepted without hesitation. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Thomas. Doug, if you'd like to approach the podium. And then on deck will be David Marshall.
Thank you,
Good
Mayor,
evening.
council members. Apologize for the casual attire. I've got a new knee, and I can't put long pants over this giant cast that I have.
You're fine.
So anyway, it is what it is. Sorry. I just want to share a few thoughts. As you may know, I've been president of Johnson Development Corporation I've been there for 26 years. I just retired 2 months ago. But
Doug, where's your address?
my address, I'm sorry, is 1 Quiet Vista Drive, Sugar Land, 77498 in the Imperial neighborhood. Over the years, we have tried to develop some of the highest end quality master plan mixed-use communities, and that I'm sure you're aware of. I mean, examples being Riverstone, where we've got average home prices in the 700s, and we have homes that are from 2 to 10 million that are just blocks from multifamily housing that we put in the community. Same thing with Sienna Plantation. Same thing with our Imperial project, with what Suba has done there, where they have multifamily properties renting in the 2,000 to 3,000 a month range. I mean, I see Kaplan as being quite comparable, if not better, than some of the developers that we have brought into our master plan communities, including Suba, including Midway that has done City Center, including Gerald Hines Corporation, my son works for, that does thousands of multifamily units in very prosperous locations. So my point being is that as you look at the examples of the developments that we have put on the ground, the notion that that has impacted property values is absolutely untrue. The notion that it's impacted schools is not valid either. Traffic either. I mean, all of these things as perceived negatives are true with the Fondren Southwest and some of the previous developments that didn't have the type of developers that have long-term vision and have high-quality standards. And what you have created, I mean, the requirements that they have to adhere to here, it's only going to be first class, I promise you, and it's not going to be a negative impact on this city. So anyway, from my experience, I say you need to do this deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. David Marshall, and then Rick Goolsby is on deck.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name's David Marshall, and I'm here today to speak in favor of the proposed development. I'm not part of the proposed development in any form or fashion, but I do know the Kaplan team, and they're top-notch Class A developers, and they do what they say they're going to do.
David, where do you live?
I live in Houston, but I'm down here, I feel like, every other weekend for a softball tournament for one of my daughters. So real quick, I own a land brokerage firm here in Houston called Dosh Marshall Real Estate. Been doing it for almost 2 decades now. We've got offices in Houston, Austin, and Dallas-Fort Worth. And I'm going to share my resume here with you, not just to pat myself on the back or beat on my chest, but I think it kind of establishes me as a good source for the subject matter at hand and what constitutes a good multifamily land site. My firm, we've sold over $3 billion worth of land, over 15,000 acres, which constitutes about 500 different sites. Of those 500 sites, about half of them we've sold to multifamily developers. We sold the land over next to the Skeeters baseball park to Suba for Doug Goff and Johnson Development. And we also sold the tract to Gray Star next to the Skeeters ballpark as well. But, we sell land to some of the, top, multifamily developers across the country, like Hines and Trammell Crow Residential, Suba, Wood Partners, Alliance, just to name a few. And, Kaplan's right there on that list with every single one of those developers as a top-notch Class A apartment developer. A lot of times there's a negative connotation with multifamily. And, the multifamily of today is not the multifamily of 20 to 30 years ago or even 10 years ago. The apartment, these multifamily developments nowadays, they're nicer than a lot of homes, or at least homes that I've lived in. The interior finishes are, second to none. Like Jeff mentioned earlier, he rattled off the list about 10 or 20 of them. And then the monthly rental payments for these apartments are going to be higher than a lot of mortgage payments. So they're going to be top-notch Class A multifamily units. Attributes for this specific site, it's well located. It's surrounded by what apartment developers want to be surrounded by: commercial, office, retail, major employment centers like Schlumberger and Noble, who are nearby, and then also the access to the property being on a corner. The 3 streets that it's close by give it convenient and close access to 2 major thoroughfares, Highway 90 and Highway 59. So that should alleviate any concerns of congestion and traffic that I know a lot of municipalities have. And last of all, it doesn't have any adjacency to any for sale single family, which is also, I know, a concern of a lot of municipalities. But I think this site would be a perfect site for apartment development. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Goolsby, and on deck is going to be Sharon Leonard.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight, and it's fun for me to see all of the different opinions that are expressed, and we appreciate the opportunity to do that. I'm not a real estate expert or a developer. I live at 2503 Plantation Lane in Sugar Creek, so I'm just a homeowner in that neighborhood. And as I looked at this development, to me it looks like it's a development for young professionals. I've got one recent college grad. I've got 2 in college, one that's headed to college in the fall, and then 2 more at home. And I would love to see a place like this. As I think about the business that I do in downtown Houston with all of the mixed-use type facilities that are down there, this type project really breeds of the type of place that I could see my kids settling in until such time as they start to have kids and want to move in next to us. So I would definitely be in favor of this project, and just pray that you'd support it.
Thank you, Rick. Sharon Leonard, and then on deck is Herman Duenas. Oh, no, ma'am, you'll have to come to the microphone. We can't pick you up back there. Good evening.
Good evening. I apologize, I'm shy. Our Honorable Mayor Zimmerman, City Council, thank you for letting me speak. Number one, I want you to know right offhand, I am opposed. I've been a widow for many years. I'm here with 3 of my friends who are also widows who are opposed. We're concerned about the traffic. We're concerned about the crime. We're concerned about our school district. We don't think this is a good idea. Have we thought about giving a tax break to get other businesses in this same area that maybe we haven't done before? Instead of letting a big corporation like Kaplan come in and develop something that a lot of us do not want. If there is crime in our neighborhood, I'm not going to think of anyone except the new development coming in and bringing strangers to our neighborhood. And who is to say that those moving in to these apartments are going to stay in this area and work in this area? The only thing they're going to be doing is paying rent and going partying in the city if they're young professionals. Thank you for my time.
Sharon, what's your address?
I have 2 addresses in Sugar Creek.
Yes, ma'am.
I live at 3002 Fairway Drive. I also have a home at 3235 Country Club Boulevard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got Herman Duenas at the podium and Rich Muller on deck. Good evening, Herman.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Herman Duenas. I live at 15700 Lexington Boulevard, apartments just across Highway 6 from here. I grew up in Sugar Land, went to middle school and high school here, and I even bought my first house in Sugar Land back in 2006. At the moment, I live in apartments, and I like the idea. I think it's a good idea anytime that you have competition and choices for consumers, and having another high-quality development in the city of Sugar Land doesn't force us to live in cities like Houston. I love Sugar Land. I've moved out a number of different times. I spent the last 6 years in DC, and when I moved back to Houston, I didn't have a great experience. So I moved back to Sugar Land, and I love it here. So anything that you can do to keep Sugar Land natives here, I think is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Herman. Rich Muller at the podium and Andy Ushoff on deck.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Rich Muller, 202 Century Square Boulevard. We have the office building right next to the proposed rezoning. Look, the reason people live in Sugar Land and decide to invest millions of dollars in building buildings and businesses in Sugar Land is because Sugar Land has a strong zoning, strong architectural requirements, and because the city is best known for long-term comprehensive planning and development. Approving this rezoning application is completely inconsistent with what has made Sugar Land great. This rezoning request is a piecemeal rezoning, the antithesis of planned zoning. And that's the words the Texas Supreme Court uses to describe spot zoning, right, which is a rezoning that singles out a small tract for treatment that is different from and accorded to the similar surrounding area. And when you look at what's being asked, this is the current zoning map for the triangle and the area of Sugar Creek around it. You're being asked to rezone this spot, X marks the spot, and keep everything else the same. That's spot zoning, and it's illegal. It's been suggested that this is an incremental approach to redeveloping the triangle into the regional activity center that's called for in the comprehensive plan. There is no evidence, none whatsoever, that what they're going to build will lead to what the comprehensive plan requires. It's a wish and a prayer. And I would ask you to consider this. I'd ask you to ask yourselves this as you're deciding how you vote. What is more likely to be the result? That this project will be a catalyst to single-handedly transform this 150 acres into a regional activity center, or in 5 years, whatever commercial activity goes there, none of which is guaranteed, right, will be dark and you'll be just left with a large apartment complex. Which one is more likely? We office there, right? I can tell you what I think is more likely is you end up with just a big apartment complex. Where would you put your money on that bet as to which one would happen? Because you are gambling with my money, and you're gambling with the future of that triangle if you approve this request as this piecemeal implementation of the RAC. So if you aren't 100% sure that this will transform this triangle, you have to vote no. And again, these guys promised you and showed you lots of pretty pictures of a bunch of stuff they say is going to come, none of which is contained in the actual document you are being asked to approve. None of that is guaranteed.
About 10 seconds.
Yep, got it. So if you're going to make the triangle a RAC, it needs to be comprehensive. You can do better. The citizens deserve better. The business owners deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. We get, no clapping, please. Andy, we've got you at the podium. Colby Curtis, you're on deck.
I'm not used to being on this side, Mayor. I apologize.
You're going to be fine, Andy.
Hi, my name is Andy Oshold. I'm a 16-year resident of Sugarwood at 1714 Coles Farm, where as a resident I've raised my children near this proposed project. This is an excellent and exciting proposal and should be approved without delay. The fact that some Sugar Creek residents on the other side of a 10-plus lane highway with no tie to this development except by name are the only neighborhood that's come out against this, where every other group in Sugar Land wants this and wants it to grow, including the other main developers of this city. All of the issues against this project are based not in fact, and sadly either border on or are outright ugly attitudes which are bringing out some of the worst in my neighbors. If other Sugar Land developers want to build other projects on the other side of the freeway, they should do the incredible heavy lifting that Kaplan's done over the last 2.5 years. Instead of engaging in a last-ditch effort to torpedo a plan with statements over the last 4 months. These type of development plans are what the city of Sugar Land needs and has needed for years. To deny it, with all due respect, would be a lasting stain on the city council. City council members and mayor, I ask that you consider this. If this plan does not meet the incredible standards that we as a city have developed for multifamily use as a part of our planned use development, what plan possibly could? Instead of cowing to the veiled, hurtful, inaccurate comments that a small portion of my neighbors have made behind an angry developer fueling them, I ask you instead, throw out a welcome mat and show other multifamily developers how we expect jobs to be done in this city. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Colby Curtis at the podium, and Art Charette is on deck.
Mayor, City Council members. Before I begin, I'd like to say I wasn't really concerned with my 3 minutes until I saw your 2 6-foot clocks on the wall. But I'll do my best to try not to speed read. Thank you for giving me a few minutes tonight. I'm Colby Curtis, and a 35-year resident of Sugar Land. For the majority of my career, I've been involved in commercial real estate brokerage and development here in Fort Bend. That has included a number of projects in Sugar Creek Center. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the district of Sugar Creek and the rezoning of the 8 acres on Sugar Creek Center Boulevard from current BO zoning to planned development zoning. I'd like to begin my comments by saying that I'm not involved with the development being discussed. I'm here to speak on my behalf as a Sugar Land resident, as a long-term member of the Sugar Land commercial real estate community, and as a friend and supporter of Marvin Marcell's efforts in regard to this project. That is a privilege, not just because he's a friend, but because I've never known Marvin to put his time and efforts behind a project that did anything but make his community better. That is no different with this project. I've been fortunate to have been able to have a front seat to witness the phenomenal development success story that has been Sugar Land. That success was hard-earned, but well worth it. Most in this room have been a part of that and are to be commended. There have been several occasions where I didn't agree with the city in regard to the direction they were taking with new development. Looking back, I think that opinion generally grew out of my frustration with my belief that the city's vision didn't necessarily match up with the product that the market was demanding. I understand that careful and thoughtful planning is what laid the groundwork for what the city has become today. At the same time, however, demand cannot be legislated. Demand is an economic principle relating to the quantity of a product that a consumer is willing to purchase at a given price over a given period of time. Today's commercial real estate consumers desire environments where they can live, work, and play in one location. If we are to continue to attract new companies and economic development to the city, we must be able to provide those employers residential alternatives, such as the district at Sugar Creek. I believe that projects like the district at Sugar Creek will be essential to Sugar Land's ability to continue to compete with other economic centers around the greater Houston area. That doesn't mean that we need to sacrifice quality. That can be legislated. If Sugar Land is to continue to lead our community, that is a first choice for individuals, families, and businesses considering relocation, then we must not only compete, we must excel at offering products and environments that are first in class and offer consumers what they are demanding. From what I know about them, Kaplan is a first-class developer, and I feel that all of those issues will be successfully addressed by their team, city staff, and all of you. I'd like, again, to voice my strong support for the mixed-use nature of the product and the things being discussed. I'm certain that a quality mixed-use residential development, such as District of Sugar Creek, will bring value to the city and to Sugar Creek and surrounding property owners.
Thank you, Kobe. Art Charette up, and then we've got Peter Jacob will be next on deck.
Hey, thanks for letting me speak. I guess I'm unique. I live at 2 Stadium Drive, and I live in a luxury loft. And I got a TWIC card. I don't know how many of my neighbors are criminals. Most of my neighbors are college graduates. It's a great facility. And we also helped catch those guys that were the catalytic converter thieves. And we also did a stadium full of people next door. You know, so I think when you do luxury lofts, you do get a different quality of person. I know that there's talk about you sell this place after you build it. Okay, well, from what I understand right now, Imperial Lofts is about to be up for sale again. But what makes a loft is the actual building, the people that are in there, and the amenities of the people that it attracts. So it didn't matter to me who the owner was. It was my neighbors that I think are great people. It's the building itself and the services that I get from it. And I think it's a fun design. I think people are doing a pretty good job. I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Got Peter Jacob at the podium and David Prang on deck.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Peter Jacob. I live at 3019 Montford Court. I've been a resident of Sugar Creek for 27 years now. Can't believe it. It's unbelievable. I'm also want to state I don't have any financial interest at all in this particular project, but as a commercial developer here in Sugar Land, I feel that knowing the process of going through and developing and being in front of City Council and planning and zoning, that my development, the crossing at Telfair, was vetted and I believe was able to bring to the city a first-class commercial development. The one thing that we've missed in all of this is multifamily. And I can tell you that as a former employee of Sugar Land Properties and actively involved in the development of Sugar Land Town Square, the one thing we missed, and I think everybody will agree to it, is the fact that there wasn't enough multifamily development in here to support these businesses. With that being said, I believe that Kaplan is a first-class developer. The city and staff are going to require that they are going to produce what they state they are. So as far as I'm concerned, with those checks and balances that are in place, this development will be stellar. It will be first class. They are first class developers, and I think that the city will benefit from this particular development, and I'm in full support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter. David Pring. After David, we're going to take a brief recess, about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back, and Carolina Serratos will be at the podium. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I came here tonight, wasn't sure what I was going to say. If anything, I've listened on the video to two former past discussions about this. And, oh, by the way, I live at 607 Chevy Chase in Sugar Creek. We moved there 45 years ago, raised 4 kids, all went to Dulles, elementary, junior, and high school, and 2 of them have moved back into Sugar Creek. I'm interested, I'm concerned about what happens and what happens to Sugar Creek. Anyway, what I wanted to say is there have been lots have said pros and cons. A lot of developers have got up here, have been very eloquent. I have heard a flip tonight where long-term, not short-term and all this. But when it comes to Sugar Creek and our neighborhood, and I'm not going to hash about the traffic and all that. I don't live on Country Club. I do ride my bike. I can learn not to ride during time when kids are being picked up at school or being dropped off. If I can't learn that, shame on me. But what I wanted to say is it's going to have an impact on Sugar Creek. Again, I'm not going into the things that I've said before. And all I ask is, and pray for, is that you think practically about what's happened and what the effect will be. Thank you.
Thank you, David. This time we're going to do a 10-minute recess, and council members will be back on the dais in 10 minutes. Everybody stretch your legs. Yeah, you held out?
So I did not see the rules. Thank you. I can tell you that there were several of us.
Got to my old football coach, Ray Auburn. He used to be the mayor of Ruidoso. He's sitting back there in the back. He was giving me a hard time. Thomas, you around? Where'd he go? Wait for the city secretary to get back. Carolina, I got you up there now. I can't get you started until I get city secretary back. I'm getting ready to send the officer out to get him. We'll back up. Okay. Nellie, okay. Carolina, go ahead.
Hello there. My name is Carolina Serratos, and I live in Sugar Creek at 1727 Country Club Boulevard. I served 5 years on the Land Use Advisory Committee. I felt very privileged to represent my generation in the update of the Land Use Plan. I grew up in Sugar Land when my family first moved out here in 1994. I commuted to St. Agnes Academy during high school and to University of Houston for college. As I've gotten older, I thought about moving out, but I never found anything that I liked close to home. As a single woman, a small business owner, and part of the millennial generation, I'm not looking for a house. The development previews are precisely what I look for if I moved out of my parents' house while still being close to them and my grandmother, who also lives in Sugar Creek on Sugar Creek Boulevard. What I find hard to understand is that years later, after the LUAC, after many studies showing this is what the city will need to stay relevant, why aren't we building these yet? How come is it okay for me to stay at home, but the minute I want to rent a place, I become one of those people I keep hearing about who aren't wanted in the Sugar Creek track across 59? The younger generation of people wants to rent without committing to a mortgage. They want to choose a house with a spouse whenever the time comes. They want to put relationships before their careers. This means staying closer to the family is important. We drove to the River Oaks district for brunch just the other weekend. Take a look at that setup. Those are apartments. As a single woman, I would feel safe living there. Why aren't you encouraging your children to put roots closer to home? And why is it okay for me to live at home but not rent a nice upscale apartment? We are very fortunate to have 8 acres of infill in the Sugar Creek Triangle that can start the process of redeveloping that regional activity center and encourage others in the Sugar Creek Triangle to redevelop. If we lose this track to yet another pad site or office building, we'll fall further behind the vision. Myself, my parents, and my grandmother support this. I encourage you to vote in favor of the Kaplan proposal. Be the elected officials who give to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. Next up is Miss Debbie Kaufman, and Debbie's actually going to speak for a number of people, so we're going to combine her time. Debbie, if you'd come to the podium, and then on deck is Heather Davis. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Good evening. I'm Debbie Kaufman. I'm a 28-year resident of Sugar Land. I've been a neighborhood rep for 26 years, and I'm in my 13th year as a levy director. I'm a graduate of the Sugar Land 101, and I've served on numerous city task forces and committees. I served 5 years on the Land Use Advisory Committee, co-chairing it the last 3 years. I do not have a financial interest in the passing of this project, nor do I have a financial interest in the failure of this to pass tonight. We're here to view a proposal for an exciting new project that will give my family and my fellow citizens a new revitalized Sugar Creek Triangle. I can state from the start that it is exactly what the LUAC envisioned for this area. I want to address 4 questions. Number 1, who wrote the land use plan and what is it? Do we need a comprehensive plan for the Sugar Creek Triangle before approving the project? Is the triangle a good location for this project? And why are we so challenged to approve the Kaplan proposal? Number one, the LUAC was commissioned by City Council in 2013 to update the land use plan. The committee was comprised of citizen volunteers, 2 of which were also serving on P&Z. Our 2-year commitment for many of us turned into 5 years. Page 3 of the plan states that the purpose of updating the land use plan was to ensure that Sugar Land continues to thrive and to ensure future development and redevelopment is aligned with the vision and goals laid out in the comprehensive plan and provide further guidance on land use specific goals and policies. From that statement alone, we see the plan consists of a vision for the future of Sugar Land, and it contains specific goals to get us there. The citizens of Sugar Land requested we preserve the single-family neighborhoods, which is the first goal in the plan. The second goal is to create mixed-use activity centers to address the request for more pedestrian-friendly, higher-density redevelopment in areas around the city. So to blend those 2 goals, LUAC gathered input from citizens, consultants, experts, P&Z, City Council, and it was decided that Sugar Land would have a ratio of 88% single-family to 12% multifamily. And as you've seen tonight, the numbers actually are more closer to 92% single-family to only 8% multifamily. So we have plenty of wiggle room there. We are also to have housing opportunities to meet the needs for people of all ages and in all stages of life. So this means Sugar Land will see some additional multifamily units in the future. The plan went further, though, and expanded on the vision of future multifamily by redefining it as vertically mixed-use buildings to maximize pedestrian activation. And they would be built in racks to ensure multifamily is dispersed throughout the city, thereby not to overburden any one area with large numbers of units. So does this proposal for a vertically mixed-use multifamily project with live-work retail in the Sugar Creek Triangle align with the plan? Yes, it does. It's exactly what the LUAC committee envisioned. Do we need a comprehensive plan? It's been suggested we need a comprehensive plan for this full redevelopment of the Sugar Creek Triangle. I submit that plan is not the best word to use here because the plan denotes a form of control. And today, neither the city nor any single developer owns enough of the 145 acres in this rack to control the redevelopment all at one time. This is no surprise to those of us who worked on LUAC. We knew this is when we were updating the plan, we knew this to be the case. So we included numerous inspirational photos throughout the plan, which were carefully chosen to give P&Z and Council a vision of what this rack and the others can become, parcel by parcel in phases. Because again, the 145 acres in the Sugar Creek Triangle are mostly built out and owned by numerous different entities. City Center in Houston has been suggested as a great example of a mixed-use development. By the way, we invited the Vice President of Midway, the developer of City Center, and he was also a resident of Sugar Land, to speak to us in the committee, and he helped us craft the chapter on racks and the mixed-use concept. So the how-to is incorporated in our plan. Vision is more descriptive of what we need here, not a plan. So do we have a comprehensive vision? Yes, we do. Read pages 73 through 85 of the plan. Is this a good location? So everyone in the room knows we did not create racks. They existed in some form already. The Sugar Creek Triangle is an office park, and business office will continue to be its unique identity and its regional draw as people come from outside of Sugar Land to work. Town Square Rack here at City Hall, the mall, and medical, that's its unique identity. Imperial will have our history component and Constellation Field, and so forth. Each rack has its own identity. But the Sugar Creek Triangle is the location most ideally suited for this particular redevelopment style of mixed use because it's the entrance to Sugar Land. We need something more than a nondescript business park right now that is, with the exception of Papacitos, basically closes at 6 p.m. every night and is dead on weekends. Currently, there are hotels that lack support services, there's aging retail, and disjointed buildings. We'll have a 3-restaurant cluster with a central green space for eating and lingering, operated by Sugar Land's premier local restaurateur, who owns Japaneros, Jupiter, and Guru Burger, all here in Town Square. And this will support the hotels and the businesses that currently have very few choices. It's easy access for those who will live in the vertically mixed-use multifamily and work in Houston, Galleria, and the Energy Corridor. So it's a hop-on, hop-off of 59 and 90. They won't be driving through the adjacent neighborhoods. Pages 84 and 73 speak specifically to this Sugar Creek Triangle. New development around existing buildings can create a greater mix of uses and a more walkable area. The area should include support services for the daytime office population and nighttime resident population. Each phase of development should contribute to the ultimate intended mix. The first phase of development in a center with primarily office should include other uses, such as retail, residential, to help balance existing offices. So the question of whether residential is a good idea for this area is a resounding yes. What we don't need is yet another office pad site with parking. That is not what the land use looked at for the land use plan. So the Sugar Creek Triangle is a good location for a mixed use development, and the project is the first phase whose use is different from the office. Yes, it definitely is. And lastly, why are we so challenged on this vote tonight? Well, we shouldn't be. LUAC upheld its responsibility to the citizens of Sugar Land by producing a document that reflected the views of citizens, P&Z, and council. We know this because the plan was approved by P&Z and adopted by council in 2018. And 3 of the current city council members voted for that plan back in 2018. We were led to believe that once adopted, the city would proceed to implement the updated plan. And before we blame COVID and staff changes or whatever, it's clearly disappointing that although council supports the plan, 4 years on, they haven't succeeded in implementing the plan. And plan not implemented doesn't do us much good. So that brings us to tonight. All we need to do is decide if this 8-acre tract proposal is in alignment with the land use plan for the Sugar Creek Triangle. And the answer is yes. Tonight you have heard a little bit, and you're going to hear a bit more from LUAC members who are anxiously waiting to see a vision come to life for the citizens we served, because this is a project that will benefit all of our fellow citizens and the business owners. It's not about a personal agenda or any one sector or group getting their way. Tonight we can right the wrong of slow progress of implementing the land use plan. Until we do that, we'll continue to put office pad sites in areas that should be mixed use, and we'll move farther and farther away from the intention and the vision of the plan. A yes vote will clearly show support of the plan. I encourage each of you who holds the future of Sugar Land in your vote to bravely move forward, embrace the vision that was adopted, a vision that will continue to make Sugar Land a city we are proud to call home. Please vote in favor of the Kaplan proposal for the Sugar Creek Triangle RAC. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm now going to invite Heather Davis, and she's going to be speaking for 3, so we'll set the clock to 9 minutes. Heather?
Am I last?
No, ma'am, you're not last. Okay. But you're getting close.
I know y'all are getting tired. That's why I was asking, because I've been up there before. Okay. Good evening. My name is Heather Davis. I am an 18-year resident of Sugar Land, 5418 Avondale Drive. I am here tonight to speak about the Kaplan Sugar Creek development. I do not have a financial interest in passing the project, nor do I have a financial interest in the failure to pass this project being presented. I have served as president of my HOA in the Sugarwood neighborhood for 10 years. I was on Association's First Colony for 8 years and served every position on that board. I'm a graduate of Sugar Land 101. I served as a planning and zoning commissioner for 6 years and was appointed by Mayor Zimmerman to the LUAC as a planning and zoning liaison member for 5 years. I'm a Sugar Land small business owner. I have a painting business that I've owned for 20 years. My business is located at the Sugar Land Art and Gallery, which is directly across the street from the Sugar Creek Center. This means I'm a next door neighbor to this Kaplan development. I want to make it clear that I've served considerable time to the city and my community in elected and non-elected positions, which I hope lends some credibility to my next statements. I not only care about my community and the people who live in it, but I've been around the block, as you could say, and have gotten a pretty good education after all these years. So in addition to serving on the P&Z, the city would send me as the commissioner to further my education to the annual Texas American Planning Association conferences. And we would hear from experts in the planning field and from Texas and around the country. We learned elements of development that made successes and caused failures in other communities. That information helped me in my commissioner role and on the land use committee. The vision of the land use plan is one of much public input and many years of deliberation and hard work. Our main purpose and guiding principle was to understand what our citizens wanted and what sorts of developments or redevelopments we needed, not only in our tiny amount of vacant commercial properties, but also areas around town that we understood would need to be redeveloped over the next decade or two to stay with the changing times. Now we find ourselves 4 years into this land use plan, and we have a developer who has brought forward a plan using the guidance from the land use plan to build what the citizens have asked for. They've worked 2.5 years with city staff at a considerable cost of $1 million to get it right. One of the recurring and more important themes brought up by citizens during my LUAC 5 years was that there were not enough places for young professionals to live and for citizens who wanted to age in place, close to family, but not continue to keep up their large houses and yards. I believe this development checked both of those boxes. Another recurring theme was our escalating traffic issues. I understand that our population grows by 20% every day as people drive into our city to work. Providing higher density living options such as this one could possibly take more vehicles off the road. Kaplan's plan is one that is by definition of superior development, requiring it to be a PD proposal. When I was on P&Z, we rezoned many small parcels of land regularly. I am not an expert, and neither is council, on what is an appropriate location for this sort of development, but Kaplan has hired those experts, and all roads lead to this location as a superior and perfect location for this kind of rental dwelling, retail, and restaurant development. LUAC taught me to move out of the past way of thinking about what apartments are and look to the future of what they can be. This is visionary thinking. It takes courage to be visionary. I believe the citizens have elected you all because you all are visionaries and will take the city in the direction it needs to go. And will do the will of the people at large, not just a few constituents who are complaining. As an example, if any of you remember the extreme pushback from people who did not want Town Square, where we're at right now, those are the same people that are now coming to galas at the Marriott and dining in these restaurants. So you may ask, what is a regional activity center according to the land use plan? Well, we are sitting in the middle of this one tonight, Town Square, but we did not leave it alone in the land use plan. We know it too may need some sort of redevelopment in the next 20 years. We identified several regional activity centers around town, which Debbie covered, and each one has its own identity and different features. In fact, if you look at the land use plan, the Kaplan development looks as though it was ripped out of the pages of the land use plan. It is exactly what was set forth as a missing feature in the Sugar Creek Regional Activity Center. So to dispel any misnomers, one developer cannot alone make a rack. A rack is made up organically over time by many developments to create the one area. There's no giant parcel of land available in the city for one developer to make their own rack. Staff has done its job guiding Kaplan over the past 2.5 years to help them understand how their development fits into the land use plan. It is not Kaplan or any other developer that has to tell the city how their development fits into the land use plan. That's the job of the city via the land use plan. After the plan was adopted by City Council in 2018, it was our understanding that as LUAC members, that council and staff would be taking the next steps to ratify these land changes into zoning. Changes into rezoning, excuse me. The fact that we have yet to complete this housekeeping issue cannot be a determining factor to vote against this Kaplan project. Council and staff need to live up to the promises made to the land use and the citizens after ratification of one of the city's most important guiding documents. What message does this send to future citizens who want to get involved in city affairs on a volunteer basis if their hard work and years of research and community input are not honored? Furthermore, if zoning would be a reason for a no vote on this PD, then this should have been communicated to Kaplan 2.5 years ago before they spent time and money and before our tax dollars were spent on staff effort. In closing, I urge you not to let the pressure of apartments politically sway your decision or one person screaming very loudly against the will of the people. The location of this development is perfect. The design and what it will offer to the city and the Sugar Creek area is outstanding. And it looks, it feels, it does everything the land use plan vision asked it to do. And a vote of yes for this plan is the only right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Next up, we have Brian Monk, and on deck is Wynn Kelly.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for your time. My name is Brian Monk, and I live at 606 Longview in Sugar Creek. I've been a resident there for 3 years, and I'm a refugee from Bel Air. So I moved out here for that very reason, was to get away from all those vertical rising apartment situations over there, Kirby, Rice Village, et cetera, that were causing great traffic and congestion, and be able to come out here and start a family. I have no doubt that Kaplan is fully capable of what they do. I'm sure they're very good at it. I, however, oppose this. And the term redevelopment keeps getting thrown around. And I think if you looked up the legal terms within the state laws, you're going to find a very large difference between what's known as redevelopment and rezoning. Redevelopment is refurbishment or repurposing the use of an existing structure, where rezoning is repurposing the land of how that's used. So you're going to have a legal issue there, first and foremost. This property's been under the same ownership for 25 years, as far as I can tell. And when it was purchased as a commercial property, and has been such since then. And the LUAC and land use development plan, all that's been thrown around a lot tonight, I find it ironic that between 2013 and 2018, that nobody found it necessary or even a topic of interest to rezone this particular piece of property. It remained commercial. I also find it very convenient that in 2019, when this came to light, as far as being a possibility to use this land, it's also the same time frame in which this property became, the taxable value of this property increased by 14%. So I'd want to unload it as well. You know, I appreciate Doug Goff and his wisdom and what he's brought to this town. His developments are impeccable. One of the things I like to point about his position is it's substantiated by the fact that every one of his developments is preordained. In other words, when he's going out there and deciding what's going to be out there as far as residential or commercial or multifamily, that's all thought out well ahead of time. It's not done 20 years later after they're looking at what do we do with this last parcel of land. So that's pretty much my position on it. It's you know, I'm sure it would be a great, you know, facility just in another place. And if it's that lucrative of a deal, there are also other land opportunities, especially around, say, Imperial Sugar Plant or the ballpark, where maybe this would fit in. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Wynn Kelly. And then on deck will be Harvey Zinn, and he's going to be speaking for several people.
Good evening. My name is Wynn Kelly. I'm a principal and the director of acquisitions for FCA Partners. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, but I grew up in Houston, and my family still lives here today. FCA Partners, on behalf of its state pension fund client, would be the largest investor in this project, approximately $30 million of equity we would be investing in it, and I'm here today to speak in support of the project. FCA's portfolio includes multifamily office, medical office, and retail located primarily in the Southeast U.S., but also including Texas, where we own one office building in Houston's energy corridor, as well as a handful of medical buildings in the DFW metro area. Overall, our client has total investment holdings of $110 billion across all asset classes and is in the top 15 largest state pension funds in the United States. Within multifamily, we invest with best-in-class, high-integrity developers such as Kaplan, whom we have already invested with before. Kaplan has proven to deliver excellent quality projects in markets and locations that we believe in long-term. Sugar Land is a great fit for us due to the excellent demographics, quality of life, and high barriers to entry for new apartments, supporting healthy long-term apartment supply and demand fundamentals. These attributes make this investment opportunity a great fit for our state pension fund portfolio. Our fund is an open-ended investment vehicle with one extremely stable institutional investor. There is no end date by which we have to sell, and we tend to hold assets long-term. By way of example, we have sold only one multifamily asset in the last 10 years. We are actively involved in the construction process to ensure the projects that we invest in are developed and managed to a very high standard. We require third-party construction consultants. Sorry, I was checking the time. We require third-party construction consultants to be involved during development, and we remain operationally involved during lease-up and beyond. All residents in the multifamily communities we own must be carefully screened, including background checks, employment and income verification, and other reference checks. This project is designed for a high-end demographic, including young professionals and empty nesters, and we are confident that it will command top-of-market rents. We're also confident that it will be a true institutional asset suitable for FCA's pension fund account, which again has only sold one of its multifamily assets since 2012. We have a unique perspective as a primary real estate investment advisor for a very large state pension fund covering many markets and seeing many different opportunities. However, we are highly selective in the partners we choose and the projects we pursue. We've studied this site for the last 2 years and agree with Kaplan. This is an excellent location for multifamily. I have a little bit more to say, but I'm running out of time, and I thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Wynn. Harvey, before you come up, there's been someone else that's applied. Dennis Dowell. Dennis?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dennis Dowell. My address is 2299 Lone Star, right here in the condos. I've been a resident there for 16 years, the president of the Homeowners Association for 14 of those years. So I'm speaking from the multifamily experience. My time here in Sugar Land started in 1981. So I have also been a resident in the single-family homes. I've been a resident in Lionsgate apartment. One of my children was in one of the other apartments. So, I mean, we've utilized what has been available here in Sugar Land over the course of my citizenship here. The interest that citizens have had toward development of a land use program is also something I've participated in, not in this latest rendition, but in the earlier one that took place maybe in 13 or something like that. So I've been one of those with input to these types of land use decisions that are before y'all tonight. With my wife, we owned a store here on Town Center. She had a dress store, also cosmetics business. So we experienced the live upstairs and have the business downstairs. Right here, that was one of the greatest experiences we've had here. For a time, I was the operations manager at the mall, so I could walk to work at the mall. So it's been a great experience for us. I think it can be for future generations if we approve this tonight, and I hope y'all will do so. Thank you,
Dennis. Mr. Harvey Zinn, and Harvey's speaking on behalf of he and his wife who are celebrating their anniversary today.
Right here at the City Council.
Sharon's in the audience, so congratulations, Sharon. Great way to spend your anniversary, isn't it?
If we win, we'll go out to dinner. And you'll pay for it. First of all, I'm Harvey Zinn. I've lived in Sugar Land since 1976. 46 years ago, I moved here. I moved here because of zoning in the school district. And that's the main concern I have. But I also want to say I have never been part of any city project except what the mayor asked me to be chairman of the Red Light Committee, which was very successful when I got hammered every time I came to the city council meetings from all the people who didn't like the cameras. I have not been part of any of the 101s or any of the land plan use committee, but I do now understand if you get on the email list, you will know what goes on in the city. And I'm on your email list now. So I will be participant and understand. My concern only now, after hearing all that, and it's going to be a short, sweet meeting for me, the word zoning to me is the most important word that I think we have to understand as Sugar Land residents. And zoning is the fundamental regulation of a governmental entity used to control uses pursuant to the comprehensive plan. Zoning regulation is recognized tool of a community planning, allowing municipalities in the exercise of legislative discretion to restrict the use of private property. My concern, when you change one zoning, other zoning can happen. We only have 4% of the land left. We ought to use that land the right way. I have no problem with the land use plan of 2018. I didn't understand it at the beginning when I took this position in September of 2021. I understand it now. Do I agree with it? No. Do I agree with some parts of it? Yes. But when you look at the rack of Sugar Creek, there's two major streets, Jerry Ashford and Highway 90, and how the people from Schlumberger are going to walk over and eat and sleep when you walk across Highway 90. I'd like to know how friendly that street's going to be when they're going 60 to 70 miles an hour. And Jerry Ashford, also part of the rack. When the meeting was supposed to be happening in April, I put together a petition. In 1 week, I got 120 pages of petition signed, never sent to the city council. But there are more than just a few people that don't agree with the changing of the zoning. It's all about the zoning. That's the biggest issue. Apartments, do I agree with apartments? The answer is no. Do I think there will be a good apartment? Listen, we'll know in 3 years when they build it if you approve it. But we can't guarantee their ability to build this apartment in Sugar Creek. I know all their investors would like that because they keep calling me every week. And maybe after this is over, they won't call me anymore. And that's okay. This grassroots position I took in September of 21 came from a 93-year-old lady. I think and represent a group of people that believe this thing should be turned down 100%. We don't believe zoning should be changed in any area of Sugar Creek or Sugar Land. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. I'm going to now open it up and ask if there's anyone that didn't sign up that would like to speak. Second call. We're going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to open it up for questions from the council members. Those questions can be directed either to staff or to the developer. Questions of staff or the developer? Go ahead, Michelle.
This is towards Kaplan. Jeff, you spoke about you all are able to control the lease terms of these live workspaces. How do we make sure that the artist, the baker, those type of live work businesses are there instead of a whole bunch of CPAs or attorneys that really are not displaying anything, not doing anything, and it doesn't serve the walkability of that street?
That's a good question. The intent of having those live work units is in order to activate the street, and I would agree that it's going to be less active with a CPA or an attorney than it would be with a jewelry store or a yoga studio, et cetera. I can say that the interest level that we have had from various businesses, we haven't had CPAs or attorneys or anybody reach out to us and ask questions about these particular units. So from a demand standpoint, those type of business and the activation of the street is the feedback that we're getting early on.
Follow up. Another question is someone brought up parking ratios because of the restaurants that are going to be there. What do you understand those to be, and do you think that we'll have enough parking for the 3 restaurants?
We do. The parking ratio is 1.85 and change. We've seen developments, not that I think that it's smart, where they parking ratio as low as 1.1, 1.2. In our experience, 1.65 for a project like this is a bare minimum. The issue becomes that as the property starts to fill up, people come home and try to find a parking space, and they get upset and they end up leaving. And one of our highest costs operationally is turnover. Strive to exceed that minimum imposed by ourselves, and in this case, we've exceeded it by 0.2 from 165 to 185.
Okay. And then, have you all done the live work anywhere else?
We did live work, a couple of in a project in Scottsdale, but it was not like this. It turned out to be more like what happened over in Lake Point. And what we've learned from that experience is that you have to intentionally do the exterior architecture and the interior architecture such that it almost forces the work. But on top of that, we will make sure that in the lease applications and in the leases themselves that the people are operating businesses there and not just turning the first floor into the first floor of a residence.
Will there be minimum hours of operations to businesses?
Minimum hours of, there certainly would be maximum hours of operation, and yes, there will be controls around that, as well as if a business were to not do well, leave, then we would let the person out of that lease so that the business could be replaced by another one. If we were doing more than 15 of these units, I would be concerned about turnover and demand and things like that. We haven't even really got the word out, really pushed this, really marketed it, et cetera, because we're so far away from actually having them. And, we've already got 33%, interest of the units that we're going to build.
Okay. No further questions, ma'am. Okay.
Suzanne?
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I have remarks. Is that okay, sir?
Do you have
remarks, not questions?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So, thank you, Jeff. I have remarks. First of all, I want to thank everyone who's spoken, because this is not an easy decision, and everybody who speaks helps us to come to a decision. And this is a big one. I think being in District 1, I probably heard a lot. I think Stuart's heard a lot from our constituents. And overwhelmingly, I have heard your concerns and taken them to heart over the last few weeks. I've met with some of you, especially the constituents. I've met with the developer, with staff available to answer questions, and staff has done an incredible job, thank you, at coming back and answering all my questions. So if you had a concern, and I've heard all of them tonight, I did ask about them, and they were addressed either by Kaplan or by staff, by Kaplan through staff. I didn't meet with the developer solely. I wanted to make sure we were transparent. I haven't spoken to anybody on this council. I don't know where they stand. So what I'm telling you now is coming straight from you. I've spoken or looked at all the P&Z meetings. I've spoken to members of your POA, the Chamber of Commerce, the Land Use Plan members. I've spoken to HOAs and constituents and business owners. I have had an overwhelming response of support for this project. And looking at everything I've seen, I would like to make a motion to approve.
Got a motion by Watley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Kermali. I'd like to thank everybody that's both sides for coming out today. I think there's a lot of difference of opinion in terms of what the project is and who wants it and who doesn't want it. That being said, the United States has always been a nation where we can voice our opinion and still live together and respect the opinions of others. Any further discussion by council? I've got a motion by Watley. I've got a second by Kermali. If you'll vote at this time, please. The motion fails 4-3. I'll make a motion to deny the request to rezone the property from business office to planned development. Based on my opinion, it does not comply with the comprehensive plan, and specifically Chapter 6 of the revised land use plan, adopted by ordinance number 2119 in 2018. Specifically, Goal 2, creating mixed-use activity centers. Policy E, public spaces. Policy F, design streets and access ways to emphasize pedestrians over vehicles. Goal 3, encouraging residential options. Policy C, multifamily scale to their surroundings. Those are the reasons behind the motion to deny. Do I have a second? Got a motion by Zimmerman. I've got a second by Jacobson. You'll vote at this time, please. Let's do a roll call vote, hand vote. Suzanne? No shot? Carol?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
So we've got, it's a 4-3 vote, and it passes. Again, I'd like to thank everybody. It's a 4-3 vote. It's a motion to deny. We appreciate everybody's time tonight. We appreciate the input that we've received, and we wish everybody the best. Item number 4, City Council City Manager reports. 4A, City Council Member reports. Suzanne, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a really tough week, so I'm going to concede and give my time.
Okay. Nashad?
No report.
Carol?
Right. We attended the National Police Week, and that was a very moving ceremony at the police department, and that was along with council members Kermally, Ferguson, Lane, and Watley.
Why don't we hold that?
Okay, we'll hold.
Let's let everybody kind of get out. Yeah. 4 was Watley. For the denial. Yeah, for the denial. The motion to deny. 4 was, the motion was Zimmerman. The second was. All right, Carol, now we can hear you. Couldn't hear you before.
Very good. Okay. Well, in honor of National Police Week last week, Councilmember Kermally, Ferguson, Lane, Watley, and I attended a very moving ceremony at the police department. And also, Councilmembers Kermally and Ferguson and I attended the Portia of Sugarland groundbreaking. And then I hosted Hope for 3 at Constellation Field Sunday for their 8th annual Strikeout Autism event, along with the mayor and Councilmember Watley.
Jennifer. Stuart.
I yield my time to William.
William.
No report, Mayor.
I don't have a report either. Mike, City Manager report.
No report, Mayor.
Motion to adjourn. We got a motion to adjourn, and the time is 8:24. Thank you, council members. Never easy. I know, that's what I told Nancy. I told Nancy about the same thing.